Welcome to the True Demon Lord show. I am, of course, the True Demon Lord Franco. I am joined by my fellow Demon Lord, Mr. Byron. And we have a special guest. We have Mr. Laurence on today, who recently went 5-0 at the, was it Oxford Onslaught 5? Is that right?
That's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
Oxford Onslaught 4.
Which is a 50-man GT, I believe. And he went 5-0, winning the whole thing with the quote unquote quotation marks worst attachment in the game, which is not true. We can all agree that's not true. With plague lesion, so that is, an amazing result. Like, well done, Lawrence, smashed it. Um, so we're going to go over his list. He's going to run us through his games, talk about what he took, why he took it, how his games went, brief key moments, etc., etc. So, before we do get into that, got to do all the plug-in stuff first. So, if you like what we do here, please leave a like and subscribe. It helps out massively. And if you really like what we do and you want some extra content, consider becoming a True Denizen member on YouTube. And don't forget to check out Facebook and Instagram for all your regular True Demon Lord updates. So, Mr. Lawrence, run us through your awesome Plague Legion list, and then just give us a brief rundown why you took what you did.
Yeah, we'll do. Thanks for having the show, Franco. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually a bit of a fan. I've been following your content for a little while, so it's I'm so excited to be on this side of the table for once.
Oh, great. I appreciate it. I know we've had a few conversations on Facebook. Well, I say a few. This was like last year, I think it was, right?
Yeah, I tapped you up like a year ago for some tips because I was just getting into demons then. Thanks to this man here, actually. Thanks to Byron.
Mr.
It's
Byron.
a long time coming. Yeah. Cool. All right. So this I took to Oxford's. Like I say, it's a 52-player GT. Meta there, Byron, safe to say, is sometimes pretty fierce. Really depends who's going, but some of
It
these local
was
events
such a shark tank this time
can be
around,
a bit of a shark
honestly.
tank, yeah. So I had to
Yeah.
bring the big guns, quote unquote, the one of the worst attachments in 40k. Not going to attribute that to anyone, but I couldn't resist the challenge when I read that. So what do we got? We've got Demon Prince of Chaos. He's got the Droning Shroud aura. This is the footprints. So he projects the stealth aura for all demons and the Lone Up 18 aura for all Nurgle. We've got Epidemius. He joins the Plaguebearer squad, gives them a 4+ invulnerable save. You also have to keep a tally of the models that you kill with Nurgle units. This is a nice added bonus, not the reason you take him, but it's very useful. And then when that tally hits 0, it resets. When it hits 7, excuse me, it resets to 0. And then in your next command phase, you get a command point. Great Unclean one with the Font of Spores. That's the one that gives you the extra AP for all your weapons within 6 of him. Rotigus, Sloppity Biopiper with the Canker Blight. So that's he's the one that forces the battle shock tests on everything within 6, non-monster, non-vehicle, at the start of the fight phase. And that enhancement means if you fail that battle shock within 6 of him, you lose a model instead of taking the mortals from shadows. Some fairly hilarious moments with that, which we'll come to a bit later. But that is an incredible value enhancement for 50 points. 10 blue horrors. Infiltration, get onto natural expansion quite easily because this army is quite slow, and they have a nice little minus or worsen your leadership by 1 aura, which helps with things like taking battle shock tests when you're already taking them at -1. 3x3 Nurglings, screen, -1 to hit, beacons, very, very useful in some of the combat matchups, which we'll come to in a second. 2x10 Plague Bearers, 2 solo beasts of Nurgle, single unit of Plague Drones, Seekers, because I didn't have the extra 5 points for Screamers, which I would have taken if I had it, but I had to settle for Seekers, and 2 Nurgle Soul Grinders. That was the list. The general approach, this went through several iterations. I probably got about 30 practice games in over the last few months. It started out with just a single Soul Grinder. It started out with more Blue Horrors, less Nurglings. The general approach here and the general game plan with most matchups is you can take the middle quite early with the Epidemius Plaguebearer squad. Most people grossly underestimate what it takes to shift that unit. The difference in defense between a 5+ and a 4+ invulnerable save is pretty mad anyway. But then when you put on top of that, they've got a stealth aura from the Prince. They've got a 6 at Feel No Pain from the Great Unclean One. it is very, very hard to get rid of them. So either most opponents will undercommit, not put enough into them, or they'll have to throw a third or even half of their army to get them off the middle, at which point you can counterpunch with everything else that's sat behind them and do a hell of a lot of damage. So the strategy really is revolve around Epidemius and that Plague Bearer squads. They are your first wave that will go in and try and bully the middle of the board. Again, shooting armies is a nice little trick you can do where you can expose 2 or 3 on that middle objective, put the rest behind a wall. If something like a Gladius Ultramarines list wants to focus fire on them, they'll kill maybe half, 2/3 of the squad, pull those models, and then in your next command phase, you either pass your battle shock, heal back onto the point, or you spend 2 CP with the detachment stratagem to then heal back onto the point, score primary, whatever you need to do. So that's kind of like core of the strategy. The rest is all in kind of support of that. Obviously, the droning shroud is amazing. Mini Bellicor, great against shooting armies. The Nurglings are there in support of that strategy as well. You've probably found, even playing Bellicor for years, that on most boards, it's actually quite easy for some shooting armies to get within that 18-inch range anyway. They often just have to inch forwards, 6, 10 inches or whatever, and they're blasting away at the stuff you've got on your front line. The Nurglings really help with that. You can just put them in infiltrate them 9 inches from your opponent's deployment zone in the space that those units want to occupy and block that turn 1 alpha strike from really, really heavy shooting armies. Plague Bearers are essential. I don't think I was getting asked on Discord this today actually why I only take 2. The first one is obviously the Epidemia squad is the kind of anchor, and the second one is they're effectively ablative wounds for Sloppy's Canker Blight ability. They're there to soak up damage to get maximum value out of that enhancement, so he's just constantly forcing more battle shocks, more battle shocks, more battle shocks. Any more than that, I just find they don't trade particularly effectively. The 5-up vulnerable is just not enough to keep them alive, and they don't hit that hard without the buffs they need. So I just don't find they're particularly good at trading. Beasts, scoring. Plague drones, hand out reroll to wounds. Seekers also help with move blocks, early pressure, again, or rather early pressure relief. They're good at getting into your opponent's face and buying you another turn or 2 before big combat or shooting pieces can engage with your army. Just buys you time. And then there's the grinders. So for those that don't know, the UKTC does mandate that they are on bases. That is effectively a de facto ban of the model. 160 minutes. It's like a dinner plate. It's like trying to move. It's like trying to move a dinner plate around the table. It makes them impossible to use. So it is a de facto ban. Thankfully, at this event, I did ask ahead before I wrote this list and bought the 2 soul grinders whether the TO would enforce having them on bases. He didn't, thankfully, which is obviously the way the WTC and GW themselves mandate you use them. Even in the instruction, in the box, it even says for 40k, do not put them on a base. And they were incredible. And we can come to why when we get into the games. So that's the list. It's a rough outline of how it works. You have the frontline Plague Bearers, your big monsters supporting them. Sloppy's unit is the second wave that will go in and start causing havoc, and then Soul Grinders providing a bit of a shooting threat, an indirect threat, and a bit of a backfield sweeper / counter charge threat if something tries to dive bomb your backfield, because they're usually floating around that area anyway and can counter charge quite effectively.
For reference, roughly that big how the base is.
Yeah, there you go.
Just compare that to my head. That's how big
It's-
the bloody base is.
It's huge. It's so big you can't fit it in a Greater Demon or Bellic or Shadow bubble. That's how big
No.
it is.
Yeah.
So, so I actually really like your list. I looked at it and my first reaction, I have to admit, because I'm a big fan of them, is oh my god, he's only got 20 Plague Bearers. I think I just have a bit of a bias towards them. 'Cause one of my favorite lists I've ever run was like 120 of the fuckers. So when I had the chance to be like, oh, I'm going to run loads of them, I just do it. But I think it's very interesting. I love the strategy with the whole Epidemius thing. I can't lie. I may have stole that off you to use this weekend. I have liked the idea of it. But it's really interesting because again, you normally see the winged demon prince with the font of spores, plus obviously the drainage shroud on the ground and clean one. So for you to switch it around, go with the footprints, that unit with Epidemius, that's 20 T5 wounds with a 4-up invuln, with a 6-up
lot.
on a pain if you have it within range of the ground clean one, with
Yes, a lot.
stealth that can only be shot within 18. That unit is ridiculously hard to kill.
Yeah.
Obviously, combat armies have a bit of an easier time to kill them, but against shooty armies, that unit is a nightmare.
Yeah.
And as you said, Nurglings, Seekers, block it out, make it even harder to get within 18 of them. Yeah, so I really like the list. I actually thought the Seekers were a really nice include because, again, it gives you another way to just move, block, screen, keep that 18-inch no-shoot bubble relevant. And then the Soul Grinders, of course. Soul Grinders are good when you don't have to put them on bases.
Yeah.
And I actually think they work really well in this attachment, especially with Font of Spores. So
Yeah, AP2 indirect, AP2 on the Harvester Cannon. Yeah, it
Yeah.
pushes it into usable territory, whereas
Yeah.
AP1 just doesn't cut it.
No. But then also having reroll wounds is really nice, and then Rottger's making them +1 damage in combat is actually not too shabby either.
He's the other essential. I'd say Epidemus and the Plague Bearers
100%.
and Rotigus. Like, I'd probably start most of my lists there. I actually think like most of it you can probably get away with changing for something else, but I think certainly with the strategy with my list in this form, those units are the core. Excuse me. Yeah, that's the list.
Yeah. So
Do you want me to go into my games?
yeah, I mean, we'll just have another. Just quickly talk about the Canker Black because I just want to quickly touch on him because I love that dude.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I mean, I assume for you, he done some funny things over all the games you've played. You've had more games than I have, but in my games, he's killed shit tons of Death Shroud Terminators and Blade Guard veterans and 8-bound, and so it's really funny when you kill and Custodians as well. I think that's my favorite one when you kill Custodians because you're like, oh, you're really tough, die. So like, what kind of things did you do over your
So
the weekend for you? Like?
on his kill list, he killed a solitaire that dared charge within 6 of him, failed, died, and obviously in the Harlequins detachment, they have a 2+ get back up character strat. Can't do that if you're battle shocked. Sorry. Charged, died. A Lord Invocatus, that was fun. And if people are sat there thinking, oh, this is a battle shot test, you must have got so lucky for them to fail them. Bear in mind, in some of these cases, this was the 3rd, 4th, in the Invocatus case, the 5th attempt to get him to fail. And eventually he did. And my opponent was displeased, to put it diplomatically. Twice people had to check the wording of the enhancement. And to be fair, I would as well. It is a strange enhancement. And when you have a 9 or 10 wound mounted beat stick character that just gets punked, with no kind of defense or anything, you do, and you've not heard of this enhancement before, you probably would ask. So I had a couple of people ask me, are you sure that's how that works? Yeah, sorry, non-monster vehicle. Bye.
Not many people realize, because it can just instantly do characters, and I think it does catch you off guard, right? So when it happens, people, you like you said, rightfully so, are like, are you sure? I'm like, yes.
Yeah. And bear in mind, like it synchronizes really nicely with the Sloppity battle shock force at the fight phase, but sometimes he's often floating around and you can trigger it in other ways. So just the normal command phase one, I had him near some 8-bound that I shot, used the +1 to hit strat, and then forced battle shock once they'd resolved the attack, and that killed. And the shooting from the Soul Grinder killed like 2 of them. He failed the battle shock. He lost a 3rd. I charged in. He failed again. He lost a 4th. And this was with the Plague Bearer squad that weren't really going to do anything to them without all of that stuff, right? A Beast of Nurgle, that was in the Chaos Knight matchup. He had a Beast on his home field. I managed to dive bomb his backfield. Beast failed. As well as 3 or 4 Nurglings over the course of 3 or 4 rounds of combat. That was pretty fun.
Nice.
Yeah. What else? Urian in the final matchup against Paulie. That was particularly satisfying because he's a nightmare to remove, right? With a 4-up invuln, 4-up feel no pain, gets back up. Yeah. Paulie wasn't happy about that either. Yeah, his casualty list was impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. Think just before we get into your games, I think my favorite instance, I done quite a lot with him. I was playing against Legion of Excess with it, and he basically just fucking bombed me with Fiends, Keepers, and the Mask. Well, the Mask got a little bit too close to the bile pipe.
It's great against Fiends as well. Leadership 7 Fiends. Yeah. Bye.
Like, oh shit, my False Majesty's on the other side, like my +1 on the wound. Oh no, I'm like, yep. Oh no. And then and then I managed to put a Fiend with it, and I'm like, Yeah, it's fun.
It's
Right, so
it's part of like a similar theme. Sorry, just as a general kind of observation about the detachment is that most, in fact, every opponent, both in practice and in the event, every opponent understood what this detachment did. None of them appreciated it. They look at it and they go, "Yeah, I understand how that works." But it's only really when they're made to take their 15th battle shocker test of the game that they really appreciate quite how devastating it can get when you just keep going and going and going. Yeah,
it is massively underestimated because I think people just think of battle shots like us. It's battle shots. No one takes them seriously because they're not. I think battle shots are a really cool mechanic that's underused, but I
mm,
think this detachment does it better than anything, and that's why it
yeah,
catches people out. Because when you take over 10, 12 battle shocks a game, especially when you're -1, -2, you're gonna fail a few of them, no matter
yeah,
who you are.
yeah. That's it.
Especially if you're low leadership armies, and then it will just get to a point where your opponent's like, "I've just lost like 4 40-point models in like the space of a turn because of a 70-point guy in some battle shots. What is this?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know it's good."
Yeah, yeah.
So
I think
right,
we
so
would have had a very interesting game, Lawrence, if we ended up playing.
Yeah, I was going into the event because I knew you were there. I was I never got to practice it, but it was on my list to practice, which was against Demonic Incursion because I don't know how that game goes on paper. It's pretty drawish, but I was pretty
Yeah,
nervous about it to be honest.
it's one of those things, isn't it? Knowing what each other's stuff does and then
Yeah,
going into it. Like, I know I've got to get rid of your characters early because a lot of your power comes in your characters.
yeah, yeah.
When Chilaxi's there and I can epic challenge and stuff like that.
I think the Soul Grinder would have been a problem for your scoring pieces. Potentially
Yes.
picking up 3 screamers a turn would potentially slow down the pace of the game for you a bit. That was my plan anyway, but we never got to do it.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
day, one day.
We'll have it one day, yeah.
Yeah, we will. Yeah,
and also being able to just go like because obviously a good part of incursion is using realm of chaos and just going in your opponent's like command phase going cool battle shock, oh no you can't use realm of chaos on this unit
yeah,
anymore, like
yeah.
i
That's it.
i also like that. And then not just like because again you can proc so many battle shock tests, and so I think that's an interesting matchup that I haven't got the test out yet,
It's
but
also probably the one matchup where you don't. Well, maybe against the Soul Grinders, but you could consider Bellacor's other aura because you get to. Is it you get to re-roll failed battle shock
reroll
tests?
Even
battle
Power
shock
Shock and
tests.
leaderships.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
you're right, you pretty much the only one where you
Only
actually care
time
about
where
it.
it's potentially relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So yeah, so let's get into your games. Just briefly go over each one, key moments, units that shined in your list, maybe some problems that you kind of encountered in your games.
Yeah, sure. So round one was against a pretty well-known player, Sam Nash. Um, is he Tryhard or is he Mind Goblins? I can't. He's one of the top teams.
I think try hard, but I could be
I
wrong.
forget
I'm not
which
too
one he
sure.
plays for. If Sam's listening, I apologise if I got your team wrong, but um, very, very good player. He actually won this event last year, um, and he was taking the new Harlequins detachment. Um, hadn't really thought about this matchup, hadn't really practiced it, was a bit nervous because I knew he was a good player, and it looked like a lot of hidden damage in the lists. On paper, it doesn't look like much, but I think the damage does stack up. He had about 35 troop, so 5 by 5, and then a big 10-man brick with the Shadow Seer. The Shadow Seer had the enhancement that allowed that 10-man brick to infiltrate, and the Shadow Seer gives them lone op 18, so he could sort of avoid the indirects. Unfortunately for him, this was on mission 1, which was Funky Dawn of War. I forget what it's actually called. Is it Sweeping Engagement?
Sweeping
Yeah, the
engagement. Yeah.
close deployment one. So actually, it was quite tricky for him to stay out of that lone op 18 aura. Yeah, two units of fire dragons and 2 units of warp spiders supporting all this Harlequin nonsense. They're very fast, very tricksy, absolute crap ton of reactive moves. It's such a headache to play against. Obviously, they can do it using battle focus tokens. Harlequins have a strap that if you move too close, they can run away. Characters get back up. They can fight on death. Obviously, they're jumping out of boats, fighting you, and then getting back in the boats at the end of the fight phase. So quite hard to pin them down. And this actually ended up being my hardest game of the whole weekend. So it was an 86-85 win. Spoiler alert. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and just very, very, very difficult to play. So one of the strategies that I have with the blue horrors, for example, is you can infiltrate them quite easily onto your natural expansion and basically make them unshootable and unchargeable against most armies. So you put them an inch off the wall if you imagine like a triangle. where they're lined up against the wall, and then you can seal off the exposed edge with 3 Nurgling bases. So it's basically impossible. They can't be seen, and it's basically impossible to get into combat with them unless you're on 25 mil bases. For people that don't know, you cannot do the 1 inch off a wall thing against an army with 25 mil bases. They can fit in the gap, or if you're any closer, they can just engage you from the other side of the wall. Also, Harlequins have flip belts, so they ignore vertical distances when they charge, and most of these ruins have a second level. So when they charge you, they can either just fit in the gap, or they can just hop up onto the top of the ruin and just fight you vertically anyway. So I was a bit nervous that one of my little tricks wouldn't work. I was also a bit nervous about the 4 invuln plague bearers potentially just not being able to take that punch. And they basically couldn't. It's the one matchup where I think I lost 8, maybe 9, crucially not the whole squads, from it was like 3 squads charging, warp spiders hitting them. So I was a bit nervous about that. And obviously the 2 fire dragons were pretty much his best answer to all of my big stuff. And because of the close deployment, I knew he'd be able to probably engage some of the big monsters quite comfortably from his deployment zone. I was a bit surprised he didn't strat reserve them. I thought he would because of the indirect from the Soul Grinders being a bit of a threat. He didn't. Everything started on the board. I forget who went first or second. I think I went first. So I got an opportunity to start chipping away at the fire dragons early. The indirect is good. The AP2 indirect is good, but mathematically, each Soul Grinder is probably only picking up 1 or 2 fire dragons, and that's pretty much what happened. I think I shot and killed 2 from one squad that was a threat to one of the Great Unclean Ones on my left flank. So I pushed out to the middle, did my usual trick, got quite lucky and banged a 6-inch advance on the Great Unclean One, so he was able to push up and support the Blue Horrors on my natural expansion. Basically meaning that he had to commit a lot more than he would like to try and shift me from it. This mission had terraform, so I was trying to get some early terraforms off. Again, I think it's a pretty good mission for me because I can go out, start some actions, and it means he can't do the usual Eldar thing of just play around the edges, try and remove some key pieces, engage me on his terms. He had to come out and try and stop the actions because obviously with terraform, if you get like 2 terraforms turn 1, it's pretty much game because that's like 10 primary without having to do anything else in the rest of the game. So yeah, started some early terraforms. Effectively, the game it forced him out of his boats. He had to come and try and engage me on my terms, and failed some pretty key battle shocks. Again, I think he probably failed about an average. It was about half, right? When you're making Harlequins who are leadership 6 take tests at -1 or -2, they're basically coin flips. And I think he basically passed half. He just passed the wrong half. They were the ones that he needed. So he failed the wrong half. He failed the ones that he really needed to pass, like the Solitaire. There was a Troop Master left that was going to try and dive bomb my backfield objective to get Storm and stop me holding and stop me getting defend stronghold. So, in his command phase, made him take a test. He failed, didn't die, but then he just couldn't do anything. Little things like that just stacked up, and this is going to become a theme with this list and this detachment generally. Is all these little battle shocks. They don't seem like much on paper, but over the course of 5 turns, it stacks up. It stacks up. The chip damage. I can't use my strats. I'm not holding primary, and that was basically the theme of the game. But that was an extremely difficult game. And that's partly because just playing against Eldar is a headache because of all their tricks. They ignore Overwatch, they reactive move when you shoot them. Very, very hard to pin down. I just had to be very, very careful about not moving too close, not shooting the thing that I want to charge. And eventually I just think it was a combination of cards and a slight list mismatch and a slight bad mission for him that meant I could take that one with a 1-point win.
Nice.
Yeah, beware. Harlequins are also a bit underrated in my opinion. Everyone's talking about Inari and Aspect Host, but I think they're good. I think they're good.
Me and Byron had a little bit of this conversation after ITT where I was talking about, not that I think I never would, but like there was one army that could kind of tempt me away at the moment from demons.
No.
Harlequins was kind of it, mostly because I like the aesthetic of them, but when I found out what that detachment does, I was like, oh my god, people are looking at the wrong detachments. This one's insanely good.
Yeah.
I think it's very, very good. So that's as you said, Sam Nash. I don't know him, but I know the name, and I've seen the name do well. So that sounds like an amazing win, and that 1-point win, it must have been very squeaky. I'm guessing.
Yeah. It was there. I mean, there was a slightly unusual start to the game. So I found this out, I think 2 days before the event. I don't know if this is news to the two of you, but there is an FAQ. There's an entry in the FAQ about battle shock tests and OC value modifiers. And the example they use is the Norn Emissary, that I think you pick an objective at the start of the battle, and if you're on it, you get OC 15. And the question was, what happens when you battle shock that Norn? Is it OC 0 or 15, which kicks in first? The FAQ says the controlling player chooses what happens first. So if you're the Tyranid player and it's your turn, if you fail a battle shot test, you can choose to go to OC 0 first and then have your rule kick in and become OC 15. Now, this also applies, in theory, rules as written to the Harlequins, because if you take a Troop Master as your Warlord, all your troops get OC2. So I was going into this pretty annoyed because I thought, well, I just don't have a detachment mechanic now. Because if I battle shock them, they're still going to be OC2 in his command phase. Thankfully, Mike ruled it the other way, but unfortunately, it didn't matter. I think the 2 occasions where he failed a battle shock test on a troop unit, either the unit died or he already had so much other OC on it anyway that it wouldn't have mattered, and I was getting out OC'd, or he was out OCing me in his command phase anyway. But again, something to be aware of, and something I was a little bit nervous of, that I thought I'm not going to be able to suppress his primary like I do normally, but ended up not mattering. So that was a pretty stressful first game, and like I said, the hardest game of the weekend. Round 2, I'm having to remind myself here, I drew Chaos Knights. So he had your typical War Dog spam, Solo Stalker. I think he had 4 Brigands, 5 Brigands, and then 4 or 5 Carnivores. And then he had some 6-man Nurgling squads and a Beast, so a slight unusual twist. Not quite sure. Again, in this matchup, the Nurglings probably didn't do a huge amount for him. His game plan, I think, was to just bum rush the middle with hulls. I think he normally has the Nurglings in there to kind of screen and counter other big combat threats and maybe other big shooting threats, fast ones anyway. Obviously, we don't have fast ones in this list, so they were slightly less useful for him here. But as you probably know, like, Nurgle traditionally has a bit of a problem with damage against big stuff because we don't really have much above strength 8s. We're sort of reliant on plague drones to give the rerolls to wounds, slightly reliant on the soul grinders. But in this list, those soul grinders generally only really get stuck in towards the middle, the end of the game, because they're sat back shooting. And quite frankly, even without the bases, there's often not enough room to get them in, because you've generally got the 2 big monsters, Roticus and the Great Unclean One, pushing forward, supporting the front line. And there's no, with the terrain and with those big bases, you often don't get a chance to get the soul grinders in. And he played it really well. So, for example, I did my usual trick. I pushed that into the middle. He made the mistake of only committing 2 Carnivores to trying to kill that 10 Plague Bearer squads. Carnivores on paper look great for combat, but they've only got 6 strike attacks, and is it 12 sweeps at 1 damage? Neither are really enough, even with 2 of them, to shift that unit with T5, 4 up invuln, 6 at feel no pain. It just wasn't enough. So he undercommitted. But he played it quite well. So he brought a Brigand up with them and blocked. It was on a UKTC board. Worth saying, this tournament used a mix of GW and UKTC, which was great, by the way. So we were on a UKTC board. I was on Crucible. He brought a Brigand up to kind of occupy the space that I would need to my Great Unclean One to move into to try and countercharge the Carnivores. So whilst he did undercommit, he thought about it and was able to prevent a bit of a countercharge. So he played it quite well, and I was stuck in combat. And eventually he flipped it, and eventually the Plague Bearers did die. It just didn't quite happen quick enough for him. But it meant that I couldn't really counterpunch because there was just nowhere for the Great Unclean One to go. Normally I start everything apart from a Beast on the boards. In this case, given the deployment, not quite sure why I did it, but I deep struck Slopoty's unit and Roticus. Was able to ingress Roticus, risked getting shot by a Brigand, and then because it took him too long to shift those Plague Bearers, it took 2, maybe 3 rounds of combat. That bought me the time I needed to bring Roticus in, make space for the Great Unclean One, move the Soul Grinders up, and it was a fairly catastrophic counterpunch on round 3. I think I picked up 6 War Dogs in 1 turn. 3 of them exploded in 1 round, in 1 fight phase, which was quite amusing, and it did quite a lot of damage to me, actually. Didn't pass many feel no pains. Big boys took quite a bit from 2 of the explosions, and then he just couldn't really recover. And that was the game where I was already ahead, so I felt like I was able to take this risk. I drew behind enemy lines, so I thought, right, I'll bring the beast down. He left me space for the plague bearer unit as well. They both came down. I risked the 8-inch charge onto the beast with Slopoty's unit, made it. Beast failed failed the battle shock test, died. One of the Nurglings died that the beast had to charge, and that was it really. Took his backfields, started suppressing his primary. Eventually, he was just left with one carnivore at the end of the game. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't quite know how else that would go in other missions, other terrain. I was a little bit nervous about Chaos Knights, but yeah, it was a good game though. Lovely opponent.
You see that Canker Blight killing a beast of Nurgle? That's arguably the toughest thing I've heard it killing so far.
Well, yeah, we'll chalk it up. We'll go as I go through as I go through my games. It'll probably remind me what else he killed. But Lord
That's
of
definitely
Vakar.
one of the toughest.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say earlier, I want to see one day either it kill a Torment Bringer with an enhancement against excess, because that'd be beautiful. 170 point model, off you go. And then the other one be a Blood Throne.
I've had him kill a Renmaster in a practice game. That was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, had him kill a Renmaster mounted.
Brilliant.
So yeah, going into game 3, playing against Simon. I've played Simon before in this venue. Actually, he's a long-standing Grey Knight player. He was taking the Warpbane Task Force out for a spin. So this is their new Grotmust detachment. The crib notes in terms of what's the difference between this and the Index one is this is slightly less mobile and tricksy, but just hits like a freight train. They're just getting re-rolls for days. They've got loads of indirect from the Pigators. And I actually, this was a practice game I managed to get in quite early on when I was trying to iterate on the list. And I got absolutely spanked by it. I didn't respect the Dread Knights with the 4 rerolls to hit. And I think in the practice game, I wandered a Great Unclean One out into the middle, and a single Dread Knight just walked out and killed him with shooting and combat, which is about average with the Psy Cannons and then the hammer. Because it obviously doesn't have the 4 at Feel No Pain in this detachment. That was quite so. That was. I'm very, very glad I got that practice game, and I was able to respect the Dread Knights a bit more. So I only deep struck the beast in this game. He deployed, I think, a bit too conservatively. For some reason, I think he was a bit too scared about the damage that I could do to him. So he was sort of quite far back. Luckily, I got second turn. Obviously, Grey Knights generally want second turn in most instances. So he didn't get. I think it was the first time I'd gone second. It might have been the only time I'd gone second in all 5 games. So that really helped. It forced him to kind of come forward and start doing stuff. Infiltrated some blues. It was on GW terrain this time, and it wasn't a particularly nice place for them to infiltrate to try and threaten the no man's land objective. So I had them a little bit exposed. They ended up taking a bit of damage from, I think it was just 1 Dread Knight shooting, and he tried to charge with strike squad that had kind of been move blocked by a Nurgling unit that were there to sort of support the blues, which he failed. I think he needed a 9 or a 10, and they ended up being a bit of a pain in the arse for him because, as you know, probably from playing pinks and blues, people again usually underestimate what it takes to bring them down, and they do. With the split rule, they have in effect a 4 at Feel No Pain. Like mathematically, it's very, very similar, if not the same. And he just thought, oh yeah, maybe a Dread Knight and a 5-man strike squad's enough to bring them down. It's like, no, they're not. Particularly with Nurglings nearby, given -1 to hit. So he had a slightly shaky start. Was a bit too worried, I think, a bit too passive. Didn't try and take many objectives. This was taken hold, hidden supplies. So we had 4 objectives in the middle. Interesting dynamic here is that with the Warpbane Task Force, it's possible on a 6 objective mission for No Man's Land to both be in Shadows of Chaos and in Hallowed Ground at the same time if you both hold 2 of the middle objectives. But yeah, I don't think he was quite bold enough. I think he played a bit too shy. Probably should have started applying a bit more pressure early on, and that allowed me to start doing my tricks with the Plague Bearers, and I had some pretty good secondary draws early, which meant that I could get the kind of slightly annoying action secondaries out of the way and then just go for the throat, because he sort of trickled forwards a little bit, got close enough for me to start getting shots off with the Soul Grinders. I didn't do a huge amount of damage in the first 3 turns, but I was just outscoring him. Again, he was failing some key battle shocks. I was keeping his primary down. I went for a slightly aggressive play early on with Sloppity. He presented a slightly tasty charge where I was able to use the +5 move strat, move that unit 11, and get a charge onto a Purgator squad that had wandered into the middle to do area denial, and a Purifier squad that was sat behind them. And I just thought if I get a little bit lucky with the fight phase battle shocks, I could potentially tarp hit that unit if I could remove a couple of but certainly remove a couple of the Purifiers. And that's what happened. Went in. I think the Purifiers failed. Purgator's passed. He lost a Purifier. I swung with maybe half the squad that were able to attack, killed another Purifier, and 3 Purifiers aren't enough to wipe even a 5-up and vulnerable Plague Bearer squad. So they were sort of stuck there in the midboard, not really able to do much else. I think I got 4 activations on the Canker Blight over the course of 2 turns. Again, didn't do a huge amount of damage, but it just held him in place. Meant he couldn't really do much in the middle. Had to bring his Dread Knights in to try and clear them out. And the pace of the game just sort of turned against him, really. And that ended up probably being, I think, it was one of the more comfortable wins. I think a 40 or 30 or 40 point win. In fact, I'll tell you exactly. 89 to 56.
Nice.
But yeah, be careful of the Grey Knights. They're in the right hands. I think if he'd played it differently, it'd have been a very different game. That Warpbane Task Force slaps. It really slaps.
Yeah, I massively underestimated it twice at the ITT, so it made me have an absolute horrible weekend playing into it because my first game I played into a pretty decent player on Red Dead, which is Mark Crumbleholm and Greg Chamberlain, that team, and I massively underestimated it and ended up having to like claw back a 10-10 draw. And then I played against our very own Luke Townsend, who appears on the channel as well, on Grey Knights, and again, we took the heavier board, but because of the heavier board, it left one line of sight, which he then deep struck in a corner, sat in that corner, and just kept drawing line of sight with his off that one unit for his 3 units of what they call purgators that he ignore line of sight
They
with.
need to spot to get the indirect.
Yeah, and then and they were just picking up my demonettes and my things like they were nothing, and I could do nothing about it. And I'm like, "Ugh." So yeah, that Warpbane Task Force is
It's tough.
really, really potent. Yeah.
So they were the first 3 games. Felt pretty good. I had 0 expectations going into this event as to how I'd do. I knew the detachment was better than people were saying. I had a slightly naughty list name. I quoted, I think it was Mike Pestilence from Goonhammer when he did his Plague Legion review. And I put some quotes from him at the top of the list. He said things like, "This is one of the worst attachments I've ever seen in 3 editions of playing 40k. This sucks. Don't know how this thing got printed." As part of the reason I took it, I just thought, well, challenge accepted. Right, let's see how well we can do. So I was absolutely thrilled. I thought, I'm done. Right, 3-2. I'll be happy with that. I think that's better than most people would expect of the detachment. So then I get the round 4 pairing. So obviously I know I'm going into someone else who's undefeated, and it turns out to be World Eaters. Thankfully, another matchup I'd been able to practice, and the practice game was razor thin. It was a 2-point win. So I was a little bit nervous because I know that that is the sort of list in the right hands that can really make trouble for Plague Legion. Fast melee, lots of pressure. If I don't get to fight where I want, if he gets to dictate terms where the combat's happening, it can be really, really problematic. In the practice game, I took an anger on turn 1 charge, I think I lost most of Sloppity's unit because I'd misdeployed him, as well as a Nurgling squad because he was able to sort of split his attacks between the 2. The rest of the army just pinned me in my deployment zone, and it was just, I think it was slightly lucky that I was able to sort of fight my way out of the corner and claw the score back. So I knew that had happened. So it helped me this time that I deployed a little bit more sensibly. I wasn't clustered up as much this time. Nurglings are, in this list I had more Nurglings than I did in that practice, and that practice was partly why. As it happens, World Eaters really hate Nurglings. They stop them from scouting. The -1 to hit aura, particularly in this detachment, which is pretty tough, makes the maths go a little bit skewy for them. And, suddenly that 3-man, 8-bound squad isn't picking up 10 Plague Bearers. They're only picking up 7. The Exalted 8-bound isn't picking up, a Great and Clean 1. It's just knocking it down to 5. Like that, if you position your Nurglings, it's just these little beacons of -1 to hit. it can be a lot more comfortable. And I'm also aware that I think that I played it before in Demonic Incursion, and I actually think it's a trap trying to use Nurglings to block the scout move, depending on what your play style is and what else you've got in your list. I didn't bother this time. I thought I need all three, projecting that -1 to hit aura. And actually, I don't really care if he comes into the middle. He can scout forward as much as he wants. It's kind of where I want him. Like, I want him in the middle. Like, my problem is reach, right? My problem is armies that sit back and blast away. Armies that come forward into my little castle, my little garden of Nurgle, right? I don't really care. Like, that's where I want him. So I didn't deploy any of the Nurglings forwards. I ended up using the Seekers to do a bit of move blocking because he had 10 Terminators as well, which I hadn't seen in a World Eaters list whatever. The team that Byron and I are on, is it Zan, was a bit of a fan, so I was tapping him up for some ideas as to what this guy's game plan might be with the Terminators, because I didn't, on paper, they look a bit naff. They're slower, they're more expensive, they have a slightly scary shooting profile against infantry, but generally speaking, they just don't look as good as Exalted 8-bound or even 8-bound. And it turns out they're not that great. Like, they are really vulnerable to getting move blocked. The shooting is pretty scary, but I was able to kind of pin them in with the Seekers, hold everything back, try and bait a charge, which he did. I left a bit of a gap for him to rocket some Exalted 8-bound onto my 2 Soul Grinders that were on my backfield objective. He went for it. Was in range of Nurglings, and the Soul Grinder was in range of the Great Unclean One. He did roll a little bit cold and didn't kill it, and therefore he had 6 Exalted 8-bound in my deployment zone in front of 2 Soul Grinders. So, they're dead. Bye. Helped with the fact that they failed a battle shock test in both start of the fight phase, because Sloppity was nearby, so he lost one, and in my command phase, so I lost another one. Then Soul Grinders just pick him up in combat, right? And this game, the big play really was he'd staged Angron sort of on his half on the center of the board, just behind the middle objective, about maybe 14 inches away from my frontline units, effectively. And on turn 2, I drew Bring It Down, and I thought I was tempted to try and pump the Plague Bearers up and just go for Angron. Wasn't sure, drew that card and thought, right, here we go, let's push the button. So I popped the 10-inch move on Epidemius' squad and just pumped every possible buff I could into them, and they ended up dragging Angron down. For what it's worth, Epidemius' combat is no joke, right? He can pop off real hard. I think I rolled like a 5 on the number of attacks. So for those that don't know, he gets D6 plus 3 attacks at 5/2/2 lethal hits. Doesn't sound like much, but when you start stacking, he wasn't even in the extra AP aura from the Great Unclean One because they'd run too far. But when he goes +1 damage, goes to damage 3, rerolling wounds from the drones, and then +1 to hit and crit 5s, it can get pretty wild. So thankfully, the Soul Grinders had line of sight onto Angron. I think I took 6 wounds off from the shooting. That was with both Harvester Cannons and both Phlegm Bombardments, and then just pumped the Plague Bearer squad. They ended up having to take a heroic from a nearby 6-man 8-bound squad, and Lord Invocatus, who was nearby. I just thought, sod it. I think I'm probably going to lose them, but if they can drag down Angron, that's a good trade, right? They did. It's just so happened that the heroic from Invocatus brought him slightly closer to the other Plague Bearer squad that was sort of lurking in the middle, waiting to decide what to do. And it gave them a 7-inch charge onto him, 8 + 1 with the instrument. So I thought, sod it, let's go. Made it, and that's when he failed. No, he didn't. He failed his battle shock test in the following command phase, but he passed that one. I think I lost pretty much all of those Epidemius Plague Bearers, but at that point, with the Terminators pinned, Angron's dead, the 6 Exalted 8-bound that made that bomb for my home field were dead. He just kind of didn't really have the resources to fight off the rest of the army that had just kind of waddled into the middle and spent a couple of turns killing him in combat. And then, the Seekers were dead. Terminators came out to play, but that was pretty much all he had left. The once per battle 3-up invuln came in really handy on the Demon Prince here. He was tempted to charge him with the Terminators, and he just tanked 10 Terminators with 3-up invuln. Again, helped by Nurglings being nearby, and helped by the fact that he failed a battle shock test at -2 because he was near the blues, so he couldn't use any of his offensive strats like +1 to wound against monsters, for example. So yeah, he tanked that. He didn't survive, he didn't do much back, but again, he bought me a turn. The rest of my army just goes and mops up the rest of the World Eaters, and then they can just turn around and finish off the Terminators that did eventually kill the Demon Prince. Yeah, I think that was possibly a slight maybe misplay. Again, it's probably not respecting the effect of the battle shocks, and maybe not respecting the damage output this army can do. There's a lot of hidden damage here. Like I said, when you pump those Plague Bearers up to AP2, hitting on 2s, crit 5s, forcing that battle shock test, the characters themselves can get, other than Sloppity, who's rubbish, right? He hits you with his maracas and doesn't do anything. But Epidemius is good. If you're running in Poxbringer, can get pretty good when you pump him. So it's easy to look at it and not respect the damage, not respect the battle shock, and I think that's basically what happened here. And the counter punch was just too much, and he just ran out of stuff. That was it. That was a 43-89 win.
Nice.
Yeah, that's the World Eaters. So yeah, undefeated, absolutely buzzing. At this point, I think before that game, Byron had said, if you manage to go 4-1 with this detachment, we'll get you on the show. So I thought, yay, I'm going to be on the True Demon Lord show now, whether I win or not. That's a result. Go home now. I can retire. And I wasn't sure. I think I was having a little sneaky peek at who else was undefeated before going into that game 4. And I think there was an Orc player. There was obviously Paulie's Drukhari. I forget who else, Byron. I think there might have been a Marine player. Interestingly, there wasn't any Eldar players that made it into onto the top tables. I think there were 6 of them. 3 of them dropped after day 1 because they had such a terrible day 1. No, right.
Oh, poor souls. Poor souls.
Yeah. So we ended up getting drawn against Paulie Wallace. So if for those longer in the tooth like me, they will know the name Paulie Wallace very well. He's been around for a long time. I think he's been playing tournaments since 6th edition. Is it, Byron? At least 7th.
Very long time. Since I've been playing tournaments.
Yeah.
I've been in for about 12 years.
So veteran of the game and a veteran Archon as well. Exclusively plays Drukhari. In this case, he splashed some Harlequins in, but we won't hold that against him. But very, very experienced, very, very good Drukhari player. I'd played him before at Tabletop Republic in Wickham, where I got absolutely spanked by him. This was just the index detachment, and I was a little bit newer to demons at that point. So again, I know I was 0-1 against Paulie. I'd had 1 practice game against Drukhari, which I'd lost. Admittedly, not this detachment. This was against Sky Splinter, and Paulie was running Reaper's Wager, the slightly funky Harlequin Drukhari combo detachment from Grotmus, where you have winners and losers. If you're losing, you get the buffs. If you kill something, you're then winning the wager, i.e. if Harlequins kill something, they're winning. Therefore, if Drukhari are losing, they get the buffs. The cynical way of looking at this detachment is you take a minimum number of Harlequins to make sure Drukhari are always losing, so that Drukhari get access to all the stratagems, because generally speaking, you have to be losing to get access to some of them. So again, a bit like the Harlequin matchup, absolutely no idea how this would go. Had never practiced it. I'd never even looked at this detachment, if I'm being completely honest. I knew there was some hidden damage. Obviously, he had a 10-man troop unit with the Shadow Seer, which I'd obviously faced round 1, so I was a bit more familiar with how that would play out. Was familiar enough with the data sheets, having played Paulie before. He had a Court, he had Lilith and Witches in a Venom, he had some Carbolites and Venoms, had that really, really annoying Beast Pack that scouts 6, moves 12, and is surprisingly killy and surprisingly hard to remove. I recall in our last game when I was running Incursion, I had that in my deployment zone turn 1. It took me like 3 or 4 rounds of combat to dig my way out of it, and that just, Drukhari love that, right? It buys them the time they need to fight and spread across the board uncontested. So I was a bit nervous about getting bombed by a unit like that again turn 1. I say a bit nervous. As with the World Eaters list, I wouldn't have been too unhappy if he'd have done that turn 1, given that that's generally where you want people in your little close range, left and right hook distance when you're playing this Nurgle detachment. yeah, as well as some anti-tank, the usual smattering of couple units of scourges. Can be scary. I mean, Ross, I think Byron, you were there. I was saying to Paulie afterwards, I do find them a little bit underwhelming, particularly if you've got stealth, right? You know, because these guys hit on 4s normally. So even if you pump them with the pain tokens and they're getting rerolls, they're not that effective. Hit on 4s or 5s, rerolling, wounding on 4s. I've got 4-up in Vuln, generally got to feel no pain. So again, I looked at the data sheets. My familiarity with the data sheets made me a bit more confident. My unfamiliarity with attachment made me a bit more nervous. And obviously I knew I was going up against a very good player. So the final mission was, I think we were on a GW board. It was Crucible of Battle. Remind me of the mission, Byron. Scorched Earth Inspired Leadership. No, Scorched Earth and Smoke and Mirrors again. I think he played Smoke and Mirrors again. That appeared twice in the pack. So that's where you can burn objectives, and then Smoke and Mirrors is you can pick up a unit after deploying and put it into Drought Reserve up to 500, up to 200 points, something like that. So we both deployed fairly predictably. Neither of us had massive long-range shooting threats. So we were both pretty much on the line. I just put a Beast in Strat Reserve and everything in Deep Strike, and then everything else was on the board. Started out really, really shaky. I got first turn, which I really didn't want, and I drew Assassinate and no prisoners turn 1, and thought, great, we're off a phenomenal start here. I saw an opening where I could potentially get a no priz kill and do some move blocking with the Seekers. It left a bit of a gap where he had 5 racks surrounding Urian. Obviously, he was probably a bit nervous about the Seekers maybe getting really lucky and killing Urian. Maybe that was a bit overcautious because that's probably never going to happen. But it meant that he had the 5-man rack squads potentially available for a turn 1 kill just to get me something on the board. I hate getting a 0 on secondaries turn 1. It just kills the pace of the game and it forces your hand in a way that's usually quite uncomfortable. But I thought, I've got some indirects. I've got Seekers that can scout 9, move 14. That's really, really fast. I thought, they've got dev wounds. Their damage isn't great, but it might be enough to kill 5 racks. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. I left 1 rack alive and ended up just basically binning both no prisoners and assassinate turn 1, which I came to regret, which I'll come to in a second. So in response, Paulie drew some pretty good secondaries. I was trying to do a burn in the middle with my usual Plague Bearer trick. I had 4, I think, in the middle, the rest behind a wall, trying to get the burn off. It meant that Paulie was kind of forced to bring quite a bit into the middle, brought in the Beast Pack, charged, brought in Urian, charged, healed that rack squad, brought them in. I think he had Locust, so he did Locust in the middle with the racks. And I think that was it. I think he just charged the Beast Pack and Urian in. I don't think Paulie made the mistake of undercommitting. I don't think he was actually expecting to do much. I think he just needed to out OC me. Obviously, the Beast Pack is only OC 1. He needs to get pretty much the whole squad on. Urian failed his Battle Shock test. Urian failed his Battle Shock. When did he fail his Battle Shock test? No, he didn't fail his Battle Shock test turn 1. This will come later. But it basically meant that he kind of needed Urian in the middle, the whole Beast Pack in the middle to try and block the burn and just tie me up. The counterpunch, I think, is what Paulie probably underestimated, because obviously at that point I've got Rotigus, Great Unclean One, sat behind these Plague Bearers, a few inches away from them. One was, I think, the Great Unclean was around the sides, squeezed through a gap in the ruins. Basically, both able to make the charge. Rotigus, I think, would have needed to use the move through wall strat. The drone's ready to hand out reroll wounds. The Prince, even, I think, moved up. And at this point, this was a bit of a macro decision, and I just thought, head on secondaries. He kept me to a 5 on primary because he out-OC'd me. He threw 5 carb lights onto the objective that the Blues were holding. I had nothing that could really threaten his natural expansion. I thought, right, I'm going to get a 5 on primary. I'm on a 0 on secondaries. I think he got Containment and Locust turn 1. It's like, I'm behind. I kind of looked at the board state, looked at the data sheets and thought, I think I can probably just stat check him out of this now. And so just put my foot on the gas. Everything went forwards. Prince went forwards. Normally, generally hold him back. Don't get him involved in the fight until the middle of the game. But I just thought, I know how annoying these Beast Pack can be removed with that multiple wound profile. Obviously, Urian can be an absolute nightmare. Wasn't too worried about the Lilith counter charge. I knew she'd pick up a Plague Bearer squad, probably Slopoty's one, because they're extremely good against infantry. But I thought, if that's all his counter punch will involve, I think I'm good. So just threw everything into the middle, vomited on stuff, I think I threw a tank shock from a soul grinder in there because they're vehicles. That's very, very handy. Partly to clear out some space so he could pile in and try and fight something else. Mob the middle with just too much meat. And again, Paulie started failing some pretty key battle shock tests. The Urian one was pretty funny. I think that was the second or third one he had to take after having got back up already, because I think he got snagged by Epidemius himself and 3 or 4 plague bearers. And he died. And he died from the combat, and then when he got back up in his command phase, he died from Slopoty's Cankerblight Aura. And again, another key battle shock test that he failed. Paulie was umming and ahhing about this for quite a while. I think it took maybe 5-10 minutes to decide what to do. He had in round 3 a great unclean one that had basically mopped up one flank and was about to go and beeline for his backfield and try and burn it. My backfield was a bit exposed because I'd bombed everything into the middle. I just had 3 Nurglings on a stickied objective. He did a nice move with his Raider where he auto-advanced 6. No, they don't have an auto-advance. I think he just advanced quite far, and they've got an advance and charge strat, and he used the Raider to charge the Nurglings. Nice little trick you can do here, by the way. As it happened, it didn't matter here, but this was my plan because he also threw Scourges into combat with them. If someone tries to do that and Nurglings are holding a stickied objective and they just wants to throw something rubbish at them just to flip it, even if one Nurgling survives, you can use the +1 to hit strat and force battle shock. And obviously, if he fails, he doesn't flip the objective; it's still stickied. As it happened, he committed the Scourges in as well, so it didn't matter. So I did again. He was keeping my primary down pretty well. That was a nice move. He ended up ingressing the Archon and 10 Incubi into my backfield, but and at this point, I'd brought a Soul Grinder back to try and deal with the Raider. But this was another key battle shock test that he failed. Start of his command phase, he lost 3 Incubi, and obviously has no offensive strats available to them. With lethal and sustained, that 10 mana Incubi squad probably picks up a Soul Grinder. I didn't have the Feel No Pain. It's probably enough when they get 4 rerolls to hit from the pain tokens, when they fish for the 6s, probably just punks him really easily. But with only 7 Incubi and an Archon, and they're rerolling to hit. Nurglings are nearby, so they're only hitting on 4s. They're winning on 6s. No lethals, no sustains. That's it. And that was pretty much game. They were battle shocked, so he had to try and kill me. That was the only way he was going to flip my backfield. The 2 claws, the big one and the little one from the Soul Grinder, picks up most of the Incubi. And at that point, I think he just ran out of stuff. And like I said, it became a bit of a stat check. Failed some key battle shocks. And just didn't have the output to deal with that much meat. And that was it. 5-0.
Nice. No, so it sounds like it's some very interesting games and some very, I feel like you managed to use all the tricks of the detachment really well, which is really nice to hear. Is there anything, so having now had these 5 games plus all the practice games, and I guess you've been working on the list, but from the iteration of the list that you used on the weekend, is there any changes you would make, or are you kind of at your point where you're quite happy with it?
Would make or will be forced to make is probably 2 separate questions, right?
Yeah, so obviously, if you're going to a UKTC event, you're going to drop the Soul Grinders, of course.
That's it. And I've been wrestling with that today, to be honest. I'm no closer to. I've got some ideas, but I'm not in love with any of them. If I didn't have to, I wouldn't probably make any changes. The Nurglings, interestingly, ended up being a bit of a counter combat piece, which was really, really valuable against Paulie's Incubi, against the World Eaters. But really, the reason they were in there, and the reason I took 3, is that the matchup that this list really struggles with is hardcore long-range shooting. So I got quite a bit of practice into Marines, lots of variants. Ultramarines Gladius, Ultramarines Ironstorm, even Salamander's Firestorm detachment is a nightmare for this because it's fast. Everything gets assault. It's high strength when it gets close to you, and the output with the new oaths from any of those detachments is just out of this world. Your listeners probably will know this, that it's even a terrible matchup, I think, for Demonic Incursion. Just because, maybe with the exception of the 4 Feel No Pain Guo, but I would even say if an army like that really wants to, it can probably pick him up as well. Like that is the sort of damage that these sorts of detachments can put out, and it's grotesque and very, very hard to deal with. So that was the reason for the Nurglings, because again, I needed to buy. It's all about buying time, right? The Seekers are there to buy time. The Nurglings are there to buy time. It's to make sure you don't get blown out by turn 2 with all their shooting. It's just to stall them. So with that in mind, if I had to drop the Soul Grinders, one thing I'm also contemplating is just 54 Nurglings. It sounds insane, right? It does sound like insanity, but the amount of board that can gum up. Yeah, a Vindicator is probably going to shoot its way out of combat with 9 Nurglings in 2 rounds of shooting, but it's not going anywhere. And you can probably position them in such a way that it can't really move over you. If it wants to, it might be failing battle shock tests. So if it wants to, it might have to potentially pass desperate breakout. That's one crazy idea I'm thinking of. I've had some people suggest that maybe 2 Brigands could take the role of 2 Soul Grinders. Problem is, like, against some targets, the shooting is better. They are pretty effective, but they're nowhere near as durable. Obviously, they don't have any combat, and actually, the countercharge backfield sweeping role that the Soul Grinders served ended up being, to my surprise, the most important role they played. The shooting was meh. I thought the indirect would be better than it was. I mean, that's quite common with indirect, right? You look at it on paper and think that'd be amazing against Eldar, but actually, if they're only picking up 1 fire dragon each a turn, it's like meh, whatever. Yeah, you might be getting 5 activations over the course of a turn, but usually by turn 4, the game's probably won anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And even with the AP2, everything was always getting cover. So the shooting output wasn't that great, but the combat was incredible. And there was a lot of stuff that tried to make plays for my backfields, and they were just stood there like guardians, ready to just go, nope, off you go. And so the Brigands don't do that, right? Carnivore combat is fine. I've experimented with carnivores in Demons before. They're okay. The nerf to tank shock hurt them a bit. They're just a bit underwhelming. 6 attacks, yeah, they hit on 2s, they reroll charges. But if you hit something with an invuln, you're looking at 5 hits. Against bigger targets, 3 wounds. If they've got 4 up invuln, they might make a couple. You roll a 3 on your damage. Cool, you've just done 5 damage to a big monster and then died in return. I look at the War Dog data sheets and just feel very whelmed, I think is the best way of describing it. I'm like, yeah, maybe, sort of, not really. And because I just don't think that there is anything that can do the job of the Style Grinders, I just need to accept that job's not going to get done and just find another job that can be done by something else, if that makes sense. Yeah. There's not anything that's going to combine indirect durability and backfield sweeping, like combat threat. We just don't have access to that in 2 units. Yet the obvious thing that I'm sure Byron's probably thinking is Shalaxi, right? She's basically the same price. Well, she's probably more expensive than two Soul Grinders, but she's very, very good, but obviously that's a lot of points, and it's all located in one model. The good thing about the Soul Grinders is they can spread out. You can spread that threat across multiple places in the board. So maybe I might need to experiment with it. But yeah, I dropped Shalaxi from my incursion list for last season, just partly because I found she just got screened a bit too much. But obviously Byron 6-0 result at Beachhead means that I'm talking rubbish, and he made her work somehow.
Yeah, no, do you know what? Everything you said there is 100% right, and I'm glad you did, because it makes me feel better, because that's been my problem at the moment, because I've been looking at Soul Grinders, but I just get off-put by them because I find them too restricted. And then I don't really do War Dogs, I don't really do non-demon stuff, but I contemplated it and then just thought they just don't do enough for me to want to warrant taking them. So I felt the exact same way. The Shalaxi mention is funny because Byron can attest to this, that I have actually been looking at that. I literally sent a list because, like Byron, I'm also a Shalaxi simp, so I do love my Shalaxi. I am trying to wean myself off of Shalaxi for some specific reason that will become apparent soon. Because I'm trying to prepare myself for something. So, and everyone will see that. I don't want to go into it now, but everyone will see what I'm getting at in probably the next few weeks.
Exciting.
So, it might have something to do with the new Emperor's Children Codex, but
I'm not surprised. Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm trying to. That's the whole reason why I've dropped excess like a stone, because I'm trying to get out of the habit of it before anything happens. So yeah, I mean, Shalaxi was something for me personally. For me, I've been looking at Fiends because I feel like Fiends they perform a different role, and then obviously not Soul Grinders, but they perform that, what you were saying, of buying yourself time. I like the idea of Fiends. They can actually go and bully the middle. I can send them out to do some early primary, mess about with. It's another source of -1 to hit. So if your opponent has +1 to hit in combat, you're doubling out. They actually affect monsters, unlike Nurglings, which can be handy against things like Angron and stuff like that. And again, they're dev wins, they can punch up, and in those cases where you're chipping away because you play Nurgle, those dev wins can be quite handy. So I've been looking at Fiends like Byron. I'm a massive fan of Fiends as well. So that is my next list, as I'm running 9 Fiends in my Plague Legion list just to test it out, see how it goes.
Well, let
But
me
yeah,
test another idea I had with you sort of early this afternoon, and this is probably going to be the next iteration. This I'll probably have room for something else, maybe another scoring piece, maybe bump one of the Nurglings up to a 6-man, but Horticular Slimucks with 2 beasts. When you give them the +1 to hit and 4 rerolls to wounds, given that all of them have got dev wounds and +1 damage, when those beasts are hitting at AP2, strength 6, damage 3, rerolling wounds, dev wounds, Slimucks can go to damage 4, rerolling wounds. It's not many attacks, and yeah, you're only going to be hitting on 3s with a +1 to hit, but that again, it's more beef. It doesn't. Again, it's not. I'm not trying to do the soul grinder's job anymore. I've kind of accepted that job isn't going to get done, and I'm thinking about just committing even more into dominating the mid boards. Because again, they're tough to remove, and again, it makes them a potentially interesting target for the heal strat. Maybe on paper it sounds better than it will actually play out to be, but can you imagine how frustrating it would be to have kill one, knock one of the beasts down to 2, the beast heals back up to full, and then you just heal the other beast back, and that could be a real nightmare to remove.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
again. I've also thought about the double beast Slimex thing. I'm not a massive fan of Slimex, but he does make the beast better. And as you said, because you can get the +1 to hit, and obviously then you start stacking all the buffs on. It's actually an interesting unit. And if your opponent doesn't kill the 2 beasts, which if you manage to do it right, is going to be a hard thing to do. Bringing a beast back is just going to be a real pain in the butt.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I've also looked at that idea. I think is a really nice idea, but I think, like you just said, I think there is games where it will just work and it will just be really annoying in some situations. But then I do feel like also that unit is not massively fast. It can
yeah,
be zoned if your opponent plays it smart, but at the same time, I think it's an interesting one, definitely worth testing out. Because
yeah.
how many points is that? That's what 130 for the
250.
beast and Slimex is 120. So is that 250? Is
That's
that
about
right?
250 all in. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I can probably tell you now that I'm going to test it and probably end up dropping it, but because I'm fairly confident it's probably not going to do what I want it to. But at this point, I just don't know what else to put in. Obviously, the obvious thing here, right, is a 3rd or 4th Plague Bearer squad.
yeah,
But in my opinion, I just think without the character support, they just don't do enough. Because the way I think it plays out on the board is that you've got a couple of squads that are getting the buffs, and then a 3rd squad that might end up having to go off and kind of try and threaten another objective, maybe do an action, do something else, and it's not getting any of the buffs. And without the buffs, they do nothing. Like, they are rubbish. And maybe if you attach Poxbringer, I found this with Incursion as well. Like, I only really run one just for the sticking objectives, and it's nice to uppy downy them and start being a harassment piece. And that's good when you've got that mobility from Demonic Incursion. But generally, I just find that I just feel like they're not going to be the stratagems and abilities of the army are often not going to be available for that 3rd squad to really utilize, and they're going to kind of end up trying to operate on their own. And maybe that means I'm just probably going to be playing them wrong if I end up running a 3rd squad. But in my head, I'd want to attach another character, and then we're getting really character heavy. We're getting into 6 or 7. I don't know. Maybe it's something I just need to practice, right? And for the longest time, I had Poxbringer in a list, so maybe that's an excuse to bring Poxbringer. Because one thing I found quite early on in the testing was that I was getting quite. You probably found this as well. It's easy to get frustrated with this list when your opponent just keeps passing their battle shocks. It's like,
yes.
okay, now make a 6th. Oh, you passed that one as well. Great. Okay, 7th battle shock. Oh, you passed that one. Awesome. I don't have a detachment rule now. Like, it can get really, really annoying really fast. So I was
Yeah.
like, screw it. 2 units of blue horrors. I'm gonna have Poxbringer on his own, just sat in the middle, projecting his aura. go on, bitch, take a battle shock test at -4, go. But then it's just overkill, right? But maybe like without the soul grinders, I have the excuse to start adding some more of those debuffs in the form of a Poxbringer. And I tried running him on his own just as a little beacon of extra -1. It just didn't really work. So he probably needs some ablative wounds with him, just like Sloppity does. Yeah. So maybe that's the answer. Maybe that's the answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because this is where, and something I like to harp on about a lot is difference in play style.
Mm.
And what you're saying about the play berries is kind of the opposite to me because but again, I'm very much I'll just pile shit on top of you. I don't care if I don't kill you.
Yeah.
If you're not
Trash.
scoring points from this, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So I like, and maybe it's just because I do like just piling models on top of people and then just saying, right, cool, deal with it. I did try out the Poxbringers and I love them. So in this current list, I am actually rocking, and I'm not normally big on the small characters, but I'm rocking 6. I've got the 2 fat boys plus the prince plus Epi, Plank of Light, Bile Piper, and then 1 Poxbringer.
Yeah.
And it's still just testing out. I want to get the happy medium of it, but like you said, in those games where you're against Marines, the Poxbringer is actually massive. Like for me, when I played against quite a few Marines in my practice games and my actual tournament games, and having those Poxbringers was the difference between my opponent passing 3 battle shocks and failing 3 battle shocks in
Yeah.
quite a
Yeah.
few
It's big.
games, and actually was like the result of like I killed 3 what's the guys with the shields again? Blade
Blade
Guard.
guards. Blade
And
guards.
all
Yeah.
3 times they rolled a 7 on their leadership while within 6 inches of a
Yeah.
Poxbringer. So it was like if I didn't have that, they wouldn't have been there. Killing those 3 meant I was
Yeah.
able to kill the other 2 in combat a lot easier.
And
And
obviously, the
so
crit 5 natively is quite nice as well, right? It does
yeah,
mean that
it
they
is.
can punch up a bit. I mean, you don't have to
Yeah.
spend the CP. Yeah. Interestingly, I was reading. I only came across it after the event, but Mike Pestilence has got I think it's a blog called Warphammer.
Yes.
And I think he's obviously since he wrote the Goonhammer review has revised his opinions, and is a big fan of Plague Legion now.
Yeah.
But one thing I think I think I agree with this, is that one thing he's advising against is trying to go too hard on the battle shock mechanic. It's very tempting to just like stack. He said, resist the temptation to put 3 skull cannons in. I tried it; it doesn't work. They
Yeah,
are
it's not
still rubbish.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
not as good as it seems on
yeah.
paper. I tried it
No,
and I was like, oh, this is actually not that good.
no,
I'm
it's not
just
that
yeah,
good. Yeah, it's like, oh,
no.
cool, I can force like all these battle shocks. I even tried Skullmaster on his own at one point. I thought, oh, because on my go turn, I'm going to be forcing all these battle shocks, and they're all going to be near Sloppity, and they're all going to be losing models. It's like that little micro example works. That you will dominate that little bit of the battlefield because you'll just be forcing a million battle shocks, and they're going to be losing models all over the place. But you're sacrificing too much across the rest of the battlefield. Like, you need to be able to threaten another objective. You need some scoring pieces. Like, if you commit too hard onto the battle shock stuff, you just lose damage, you lose durability, because all of that stuff isn't that great outside of that one mechanic. But I mean, having said that, I think there is a version of the list that I'm going to experiment with, which is a third squad of Plague Bearers with Poxy. I do really like. Lots of people really love the winged prince. I don't know if do you say you've got the winged one or the foot one in your list?
I have
Yeah.
so I'm doing, I guess it's probably the meta way to do it, but it's so my Draining Shroud's on the ground clean one, and then I've got the Winged Prince with the Font of Spores. That
Yeah.
guy is really good.
It slaps.
I had him rocking to the Aggressor Bomb with the Putrefier dude, not Putrefier, they're the Apothecary dude.
Drukhari,
Anyway,
Barlages.
that dude.
Yeah.
He picked up the whole unit in one go
Yeah.
with drone rerolls
Yeah,
and
because you give him the
crit
+3
5%.
attacks. He
Yeah.
gets AP
So
3,
yeah.
damage 4,
So
crit
I
5. Yeah, it's mad.
I I popped all the bits and pieces on him and I hit every single time. I got 3 sustained on him with the crit 5s. And then was wounding on 3s. I think I might have failed 1 or 2 wounds
Yeah,
after the rerolls, and then obviously he's on 6 up saves now because -3 to the 3 up armor, and it just picked up the whole unit, and he was just like,
yeah.
"Oh shit,
He is
I
good.
didn't expect that," and I'm like, yeah,
In
and
my
then
head, I'm just trying to figure out a way that he's going to slot nicely into the list that I've got, and it may end up being that I just rewrite the list from scratch because I might trying to bolt on stuff that doesn't synergize
yeah,
that well because
yeah,
I still really like the Font of Spores being on the Great and Clean one. So like if I do have that winged prince, is his offense going to be a bit blunted? Because he's a bit of a sort of independent operator, isn't he? You can kind of stage him behind a ruin, rocket him out with the move through wall strat, and kind of project a quite big threat range from what is he, 180 point model, 170 point model?
180, 200 with the font of
Yeah.
spores.
So yeah, it's very, he is very tempting, but it's a slightly different game, right? You're making him a trading piece, right? You throw him into something juicy, kill it, and he'll die, right? He will just die in return because you're generally going to be in the thick of the fighting or in your opponent's face. I don't like the idea of throwing away a 180 point model because I just, again, in my head, I'm just like, what if you come up against something like Harlequins where their most expensive unit is 100 points? Like, it just doesn't seem that tempting. I don't know. Maybe like you say, it's a play style thing. I'm not much of a
Definitely.
trader.
And I think the other thing is you've got to time his kind of push. Like you don't just want him being the only threat in your opponent's face. You kind of want to,
Yeah,
stuck forward. The other reason I like him, and to be fair, I use Shalaxi very much like this as well, is they will sit in a very dangerous part of the board. Now we have access to go through walls. And a lot of people will maybe overestimate it, or you kind of big up exactly what they can do, like, oh, they
disagree.
can pop
Yes.
off and do sustained and blah blah blah. And then sometimes your opponent goes, I don't really want to bring this good unit forward because if I do, it's gonna get charged by the Demon Prince. And so sometimes just having the threat of him is actually quite nice. I found that I played against War Dog spam Chaos Knights, and I had him set up in a spot where my opponent was a bit afraid to bring in certain knights into certain areas, which then
Yeah,
prevented
creates a bit
him
of a
doing
buffer
certain
zone,
things.
doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so it gives you like a little bit of space you can play with. And then like you said, there are games where you feel bad trading him in, but I just guess that is just going to be the nature of, different matchups, paper rock scissors, right? So um yeah, I mean I like him. I also like the way you've done it. I like the whole, stealth on top of the font of spores. I think me and Byron had a bit of a conversation on this, and then because I feel like the Great Unclean one, are you rocking double blade in your Great Unclean one or
No,
flail?
but this is probably going to sound wild to the two of you, but do you know what weapon I wish I had on the Great Unclean one? That bell, because the amount of time, again, because of how this list plays, and because of how I'm playing it, where the overall strategy is you have your kind of first wave, which is Epi squad goes into the middle, supported by Rotigus and a Great Unclean one just behind them to project their buffs and be a potential countercharge threat for something that comes in and tries to fight with the plague bearers. And then the second wave being, soul grinders, the demon prince, which is projecting his stealth and lone op aura, and the second plague bearer squad with Sloppity that will go in and try and tussle with the thing that tries to kill the plague bearers. The way the game's often played out is that, again, people undercommitted a bit, or even if they didn't, I'd often be left with 2-3 plague bearers and FP squads, with the Great and Clean one sort of mopping up some trash on the flank that had tried to contest the blues. Typical, that the example was in the game against Paulie, right? There was 5 Carblights on that objective contesting my natural expansion. I sort of moved the Great and Clean one up on the left to make sure the aura was still in range of the plague bearers in the middle, so he could shoot the stuff before they were going to charge in and fight. And he was then going to go and charge and just pick up 5 Carblights. Now, again, for those that are listening that don't know, the bell is, I think it's the profile's on paper rubbish. It's strength 6, AP 1, 2 damage, 6 attacks. I think it's it.
Strength
Obviously, it goes
7. But
strength
yeah,
7,
that one's strength.
7, 1, 2. So then it goes to 7-2-2 with the Font of Spores. But for every model that you kill with it, you pick a Plague Bearer unit within 12 and you bring a Plague Bearer back. That would have been gigantic in some of my games. Because again, can you imagine your opponent just spends 2 rounds of combat trying to dig out these bloody Plague Bearers with a 4-up, 4-up invuln, -1 to hit, normally with shooting and combat with the stealth and the Nurglings and a 6-up feel no pain. They're finally getting somewhere. And then this idiot comes in and just goes dong and brings 5 back. It's like, oh, brilliant. And then you spend 2 CP to bring D3 back. And all of a sudden, all 10 of them are back in your face. And I'm not, this is not me saying it to be controversial or for a meme. I legitimately would rather have had it. Because but again, without the soul grinders and the damage they put out in combat, maybe you do need the swords to at least have a chance at killing big stuff. But the way these games played out, I just more often than not found him not really fighting big stuff, and that bell would have been phenomenal. But yeah, generally the flail. I think, to be honest, I don't know whether you find this, but flail versus bile blade, I don't think it really matters. To be honest, it's
No,
kind of
it doesn't. It's very much a just how do you want your guy to be able to just be able to shoot things in your phase or have a little bit extra combat? It's so minimal. There's not
yeah,
even an
that's it.
argument there. But the bell was an interesting one. I've had a few thoughts. Do I do double ground clear on because I run a lot of play bearers, or I have been running a lot of play bearers, so the bell did
Yeah,
come up into my head. And then going back to the princes, another idea I had was to run multiple princes because actually you can get the crits on any of them when you need it,
yeah,
and obviously you can get the font of spores on one of them, but if they're hanging together, they're both getting the benefit from it. So there's actually it's not like one's gaining a buff that the other's not getting. If you have them together, they're both getting it. So I don't know. I've it's loads of ideas I think to test out. But you're right. It's is that sometimes feel like you've got a lack of damage that in those certain cases where you really need to put something out, you might worry. Like with the soul grinders, they put out heavy damage in combat, which is I'm guessing was really handy to have. Um,
it was. Yeah,
but
it was.
yeah, but I mean, it's still so much to test, and I think with excess getting not a potential, they're going to get nerfed very
They're gonna
hard
get
soon.
that.
They are getting nerfed. um, I feel like this incursion will be the natural fallback for a lot of people. And I mean, it is kind of in my head, but I don't want to play it. I played it for like nearly 2 years. I've
Yeah,
got
me
bored
too.
of it. I don't want to go back to it unless I have to. This dickhead over here is going to probably make me do it by overturning what was it like 40 points of a lead and just going fuck it and go
Well,
6-0.
I was saying to Byron at the weekend, like the problem I have with incursion and the difference between that detachment and the Plague Legion detachment is you have too few points of failure when it comes to decisions. So with the demonic incursion, each mistake costs you a huge amount. If you mistime your push, if you uppy downy the wrong stuff, if you position, if you go for the wrong bit of the boards, any one of those misplays will cost you the game. Whereas Plague Legion is a lot more forgiving. It spreads out those points of failure across 20, 30 micro decisions that if you get a few wrong, it doesn't really matter. You can recover. And the inherent power of that detachment is that everyone's vulnerable to battle shock, no matter who you are, right? You could, like, it just doesn't matter. Like, most people are leadership 6 or 7. When you apply the modifier, you're generally going to be making most people take these tests on a coin flip. It doesn't matter if you're knights, custodies, GSC, like, you are vulnerable to this stuff, and it just keeps your options open. And yeah, that's what I found quite refreshing and less stressful. Demonic Incursion is stressful to play. Like, you just sat there thinking, should I Epi Downy? Should I go? Is now the turn? Is this the go turn? Should I wait? Should I go now? And if I get this wrong, I lose, right? I hate that. It makes me sweat. It's really stressful, and I get it wrong all the fucking time. I mistime it all the time.
Yeah, yeah. You're. It is 100% right. Do you know how many times I've sat there? I'm a fairly fast player. But I'll admit, when it comes to demonic incursion, the rest of my turns are fast. I will spend 10 to 15. I've actually spent nearly half an hour, and I swear to God, deciding an uppy downy decision
Yeah,
before.
yeah, it's mad.
Funny enough, it was my last game at LGT because it had a lot of stakes to it, and I was at the end of turn 4. Um, so I sat there, and we were on a clock, so I was like, I've still got like 50 minutes left, and we both not got a lot of stuff left. I could probably spend a good, and I sat there for about 25 minutes. I felt so sorry for my opponent because he was like, "Oh," and he was fine. Like he was like, "Look, it is what it is," but because it was such a big decision. So you're right. Whereas I feel like yes, you've got some decisions to make with Plague Legion, but as you say, rather than it being this one decision that if you just pick the wrong spot or the wrong unit, boom, you collapse.
Yeah,
With this, is like, oh shit, maybe I should have battleshot that unit. Okay, I can do this instead, and so you've got
exactly.
kind
Yeah,
of
there's
like
ways to recover.
backups and
And often the
exactly. So
decisions are a lot more obvious. Like, again, I don't want to say this is a list that's easy to play, because it's not, but it's not that hard to play either. It's somewhere in the middle, and that's often because you often find that the decisions aren't that difficult. For example, when you're deciding which units are going to take the battle shock step for the miasma rule, you do that after your opponent's drawn cards. So if they've got like one unit in the middle and you wait, and they draw area denial. Cool, right? I know what I'm battle shocking now. That unit in the middle, because you can't get that card now. Or they draw containment, and you look at the units that can get containment. Cool, I'm going to spend 1 CP and make that one test and that one test. Yeah, if one of them fails, you're only getting 3. Both of them fail, you're getting a 0. Those decisions become quite obvious, right? Because it's still a game about points. There are some situations where you might want to, like, I think there was one time when I was in combat with, there was the World Eaters one, and I had 10 Zerkers and the Mo with the Zerker glaive stuck in combat, and I thought, I really don't want them falling back. I really don't want them getting buffs because they're in combat with Rotigus. I don't want them getting the +1 to wounds. I'll battle shock them because I need to blunt their offense. But that's pretty much the exception. In most cases, I'm using it to stop my opponent scoring points. Because remember, this list is about this. It's a control list, right? It's not just raw damage output or raw durability. Although there is a stat check element to it because it can be pretty tough to shift. It's about suppressing your opponent's score. It's quite interesting. I'm hearing that there are some teams that are testing this for WTC now. I think it's going to be a phenomenal defender, because I found this with my practice games. Is that I played, of the sort of 20 to 30 I played, I rarely won or lost by more than 5 or 10 points. They were always razor thin. And that's because, again, it's just, and again, I could probably tinker the list to make it slightly higher performing in terms of secondary scoring, maybe, but very easy just to keep your opponent's score down. Because it just doesn't play Warhammer in the traditional way. Like, normally you go, I'm going to put this 5-man idiot squad on this objective. You've now got to send something out to contest it. Okay, I'll put my 5 idiots on and we'll do a trade. Or I don't need to kill you. I just need to sit my unit here. Nope, because if you fail that battle shot test, I'm still scoring my primary and you're not. It makes people think very, very differently, and it can create really thin margins. Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see how it plays out in teams. I don't know. I don't think anyone took it. Maybe someone took it to Pyra. Was that 2 weeks ago? Last weekend? Can't remember.
The weekend just gone. But you're right. It is a perfect 10-10 type of list.
Yeah,
And that's why I love it, because it's my type of play style. I will, as long as I score more points than you, I don't care if I win by a point. It does not bother me. That's always the type of like attitude I've had towards the game. And I just love, again, damage has never really been my appeal. I love restricting points, being annoying, and your opponent going, damn it, like I just needed like those couple points there and you stopped me and just that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
when this attachment came out, I was lucky enough, I knew bits and pieces about it before it came out, and at first I was like, okay, sounds like it could be interesting, but I'm not too sure. And then when I actually got to fully read it, I was like, oh, this has got something to it. And now
Yeah.
obviously you haven't played it, I'm like, yeah, I loved it. It is my play style down to a T.
I
I
think
think
the
we,
last,
Yeah,
we
the
have
last
to
thing I'll say
revisit
about it
our
is,
rankings, Franco.
so that again.
We have to revisit our rankings.
We
yeah, your
do.
tier
But
list.
But to be fair, I think in that we did mention about Plague Legion having something to it. I think I was a lot more higher on scintillating, but I think that was the Zinch bias in me. I'm gonna change that. I know some people are still hyping on it. It's fun. I just feel like it doesn't do anything that Incursion doesn't do. I feel like that's where you're getting a lot of it out. And it's like, oh yeah, you can get a super shooty lord of change from out of line of sight. That's fine. You can get something similar in Incursion because you can be almost as good with the Everstave. Plus, you can just have him near Bellacore. So I
Yeah,
don't know. It's an interesting one, and um, I do generally think this detachment now with excess about to be smashed. I think you're going to see a lot more of this.
I think so.
With
But, I mean, the last thing I'll probably say about it is, uh, I'm also slightly cautious about not getting too excited. For what it's worth, I'm super thrilled. This is my first ever 5-0. I've been playing tournaments since 7th edition. I've won some RTTs. I've done plenty of 4-1s. I've never gone undefeated. So I'm super, super happy about this, and I think the list is awesome. However, this is not false humility to say I had a quite good run, and in some of the games, particularly the Harlequins one, as Sam will probably say and probably telling his teammates, I did get the rolls went my way. Um, I didn't face what I think are the really nasty matchups for this list. Like, I didn't face, was it Daniel Latham's Marine list? I didn't face, pardon?
I faced that.
Yeah, you did. Tom Spicer was running this horrible Dark Angels list with Samael and Storm Raven. I don't know what I do against that stuff.
Yeah.
So I got a good run. I mean, that's what you got to do in a tournament, right? You kind of got to avoid the really shitty matchups. The
Yeah.
rolls have kind of got, the coin flips have got to go your way. You can set yourself up in a position to maximize your chances. It is a game of skill, but like I did have a good run. So I mean, I've got 2 kids. I don't know when I'm going to get to play next, but I'm super excited to see where this will go.
Yeah.
But I'm still, it's definitely better than people think. It's not the worst attachment in 3 editions of Warhammer. I think Mike has admitted he was probably wrong about that, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's it's got its limits. It definitely has its limits. Yeah, it's not a perfect army. Yeah,
Of course, but I think that should be every army. I don't think if an army or a detachment has no like, oh shit, I don't want to go into that, then it's busted, right? That should be everything should have a counter. So yes, it is by far and by no means perfect. It is definitely not. And it's got some really horrible matchups. It is what it is. Again, I've always believed that's 40k should be paper, rock, scissors. This
yeah,
beats this, but this beats this, and that beats this. And that's how I feel like it always should play. And you're saying about the luck element and all of that. That is like even the best players in the world sometimes need some luck. Like Byron is a serial 5-0 double player, a 6-0 double player at Super Majors. I go 5-0 as well. I think hopefully I'm not just speaking for myself. I think Byron would agree here that do you know some of my 5-0, some of my really good results have been like fuck. I managed to avoid some of the horrible matchups, or
yeah, yeah.
wow that one game, my opponent just got unlucky on dice and it allowed me to flip the game, and so I think sometimes that is just the way it is, and you take it. Like we get both sides of it, right? You get the good sides, you get the bad sides. You also have those events where you come out going, like, if my opponent didn't make like 6 out of 7 4-up invons there, I take that objective and then I just switch the game and I win it. So we get to see both sides of that. But I do feel like this detachment. The thing is with this detachment, I think if the rolls go your way, it's got the ability to just take advantage of that, which is quite
Yeah,
nice.
it can snowball pretty
Um,
fast. Yeah,
yeah. And if your opponent just fails battle shocks and they have a few too many failed battle shocks, it will go really well. But then also on the flip side, if they pass too many battle shocks, it hurts. So,
it's also a
but
good
that's
buffer
why.
against high skill, right? So there's not much you can do about it. There's
No.
and you could argue that it introduces a slightly frustrating non-interactivity because in practice I did get a couple of opponents get quite annoyed. They're like, "So there's nothing I can do about this." I was like, "No, sorry. Like I can't auto
We
pass
said
it."
this on our tier list, Franco,
Yeah, I was
that
like, I
this is one
can't.
of the probably, if not the best battle shock army, probably in the entire
Yeah,
game,
It is.
absolutely,
It
and
is.
absolutely.
It is
it's
the best battle
pissing
shock
so
army
many
by
people off.
far.
It's
Hmm.
like, oh, I can't auto pass it. I can't really stay out of shadows because you're often getting it naturally, or I'm generally going to be within 9 of some Nurgle units. I can't do anything about it. And I get that it can be, and actually, like, that it's slightly satisfying. I do feel slightly guilty about it that all 5 opponents, like, were a bit, they weren't salty, but they were just, it's a very frustrating, it's like, because it's a control army, it's, you don't get to play with your toys. Sorry. All those delicious stratagems you've got, nah, sorry, you don't get to play with them. And it's annoying, right? It's an annoying way to play the game. I'm just shutting down your fun things, and
Yeah.
it can kill the fun a little bit. And that's kind of how that's how the army works. But it does mean that it's kind of, it can close the skill gap. Like, again,
Yeah.
Sam is a better player than me, right? My round 1 opponent is a better player than me, but he's still reliant on resources. And if I can just switch them off and there's nothing he can do about it, like, no amount of skill can get him out of that. Like, he just doesn't have the resources. Sorry, it can be quite annoying, but also very fun if you're the Nurgle player for that reason.
Yeah. No, you're right. And here's an example. I was up against in one of my games a Chaos Knight player, and he had set both of his carnivores up on that on UKTC you have the 2 little rectangle buildings that they
Yeah,
square up on an L on Search and Destroy, and he had
yeah,
them both sitting behind there ready to come into the middle. So I pushed Grand Clean one Demon Prince 10 play bearers in the middle to just try and clear it. Had done it. He had these 2 carnivores waiting. The other knights were too far, or they were not. They were brigands, so they weren't going to be able to fight their way through. And he was like, cool, I've got my 2 carnivores. I'm ready to come through. And I went, cool. I'm going to proc Plague of Woes. I'm going to do a battle shock on that um, dude at -1. Oh, you failed it. Cool. Well, now my Plague of Woes, I'm going to choose that target. Oh, you failed it. Oh, both of them can't come for the walls. They have to come round. Oh, you actually can't get round the walls. Oh, well, that's a shame. And
yeah,
he was not too pleased.
yeah.
I think
It can be
I've had
annoying.
a few moments. I don't think I've ever played a list, maybe apart from my like 120 play bearer list from years ago, where I've actually had people like sit there and like legitimately get pissed off. Like this is bullshit. I can't do anything. Like I've got these stratagems and this I can't use it. I'm like, no. Or like my opponent like manages to kill like one more plague bearer than they should have. And it's like, yes, I'm going to overturn the objective. Miasma. Oh, you failed your battle shot. Cool. It's still my objective. And it's like,
Yeah. Can be annoying.
sometimes I felt there was a few instances where my opponent had to really work hard to get something. And I just went, cool, no, take that. But then on the flip side, if they'd passed the battle shock, it wouldn't have mattered. So
Mm.
yeah, I feel like you're right. Sometimes, you can kind of look at your opponent who's just pulled some really good moves or some really good skill, or even just got that luck that they needed, and then you can just kind of turn it off with just the space of 1 or 2 rolls and just go, sorry, mate.
Yeah.
Like it is what it is.
Poorly game
Um,
5 was the example, that rapid ingressing incubi unit, right? I made a mistake. I left a space for him to do that. I shouldn't have been able to get away with it. He ingresses them, he fails his battle shock, and now he can't flip the objective or kill that soul grinder. It's like,
mhm.
sorry. Yeah. There wasn't anything he could do about it. Maybe he could have sent them somewhere else. Maybe that was the answer. Maybe the answer is, if you're playing against this, calculate your risks carefully. Like,
Yeah.
maybe just don't risk those battle shocks if you don't absolutely have to. In some cases you don't have a choice, but in some cases maybe you do. So maybe Paulie shouldn't have sent them down there. Maybe shouldn't have risked the coin flip to see if his 230 point unit or whatever isn't going to do the thing he needs to do. Yeah, maybe, but yeah, I made a mistake, and the detachment rule got me out of it effectively.
Yeah.
It rescued me. Yeah, it's good if you're a medium bang average player like me. It allows a mediocre player like Laurence to go 5-0 at GT. Yeah.
No, you're underselling yourself. But yeah, like it's just it is. Maybe it's just me. I don't know about you, but I had a lot of fun playing it, and I really enjoy it. I just love
Class.
playing that very very
Class.
much. Like a really annoying. I'm just going to stop you doing the thing you want to do, and
Yeah.
I
Toxic.
want to say I don't want to say I get enjoyment or glee from seeing my opponent kind of stress out over it, but
Yes, you do.
I do.
yeah, I
You
do.
do.
I
Yeah,
do.
yes,
I
I
do.
have.
And it's why you said something earlier about your incursion list only running 1 unit of play bearers. Byron's the same. Me and Byron had this conversation. I will run 20, 30 play bearers. There was a point where I ran 30 pink horrors, 20 play bearers, because I just loved the idea of 3-inch deep strike, my objective, 3-inch deep strike, my objective, 6-inch deep strike, 5-inch charge. It's like, oh yeah, I'm losing these units, but you're just scoring no points. I don't care.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I think we covered a lot of ground there. We actually got kind of 2 and 1 because we also did a bit of list speaking as well. But I know I'm very excited to get more playing now with this, and now XS is kind of going to go a little bit of the way of the dodo. I think I'm going to fully focus, barring maybe an incursion return. Should this not, I can't get the list quite right, but we'll see.
Mhm.
Um, Byron, you're going to stick with incursion, ain't you? Because you're boring.
You know I am. I'm a boring old idiot. Yeah.
No, mate, you made that. I will die on the hill that Be'lakor, Guo, Scarbrand, Shalaxi combo is yours. It is 100% yours. I mean, you were doing it before the Ground Clean one got cheaper anyway. You had those 3, and I nicked it off you twice because I nicked the hot. I was like, I was running obviously Shalaxi Be'lakor. I was like, I'll take Scarbrand. And then when the Guo came out, I was like, I'm going to do those 4 because Byron did it, and it worked well. And they both went really well for me. So
Let's
it's
go
your
on,
list.
Byron. 6-0, mate. 6-0.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, and
So there's a
beating.
new law version to this. Lawrence, you probably saw it on the group. I was talking about it like last week. Um, it started off as the Twilight list, characters from Twilight, and the Giro got added in literally just as a random like thought. What horror movie character can he be? He's going to be Beetlejuice because Beetlejuice was coming out in the time, and now they're all Pokemon. So we got Be'lakor is Giratina, Shalaxi is Mewtwo, Scarbrand Charizard, and
Please
Guo
tell me the Guo
Snorlax.
is Snorlax.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Very good.
that's
Did you say
the one.
Scarbrand is Charizard?
Yep.
He's got no wings. It doesn't make sense. Scarbrand,
Yeah, and
Charizard
listen,
can fly. Damn it!
Mewtwo can fly and Shalaxi can't.
All
But
right,
my
fair
god,
enough. All
Happy
right, fair enough.
Danny.
Fair enough. I'll give you that. I like Bellacor's Giratina though. That's cool. I like that. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I mean, it's annoying as well because with incursion, I'm in 2 minds with it at the moment. I don't want to go back to the whole Be'lakor thing because not Be'lakor thing, Scarbrand thing because you're doing it, and I don't want to do what you're doing. But then also I'm like, I do want to give. Do you remember my list from the summer, the one that I won the golden ticket with, the four-legged violence list, where it was just fucking fiends and crushers? I kind of want to do that again, but I don't know. I'm in two minds, but yeah. So I'm very excited to test out more Plague Legion. I'm assuming when you get the chance to, you'll be playing more of it as well, Lawrence.
Yeah, well, when I get the chance to.
When you get the
God,
chance to.
2.5-year-old and a
Um,
3-month-old. When's that going to happen? This was probably my one weekend pass for the year spent.
But yeah, so thank you for coming on, Lawrence. It's been really cool chatting and getting to talk about Plague Legion. I've been really wanting to have like a proper chat with Plague Legion, so it's been nice
I
to do
love
it.
it,
And
man.
also, again, well done on your amazing performance on the weekend. Even with a bit of luck, sometimes that's all you need. Um,
It's not luck, it's
and
fire and dice.
well,
It is.
it's not quite 6++, but we'll go with it. We'll go with it.
Now we're replacing that logo on this video, mate. You're outnumbered today. Sorry.
What one? The 6++ logo or the True
Yeah.
Demon logo?
No. True Demon Lord can stay because there's two more
Oh,
of us
can it?
here.
Oh,
But
thank you,
six plus
thank you.
plus is getting replaced.
I won't. I don't let Tom hear that. He won't be very happy.
I'm gonna message him right now. We're replacing six plus plus with fire and dice.
Oh God. Right. I think we'll call it there. Thank you very much, Lawrence, for coming on. Byron, you were kind of just furniture in the corner, but we still love you. So, as always, amazing to have you on. Thank you for tuning in. We will catch you all in the next one.